about the so-called infinite tank potential of the Russian army. As I cover the subject of tanks in the Russian army, I periodically encounter the opinion that Russia's tank potential is practically infinite. And it seems that this is not unreasonable. For example, there is information in open sources about the number of tanks in storage in Russia. Only these types of tanks in storage in Russia are more than 13,000. But there is a nuance. The fact is that a tank that has been in storage for a long time, especially one that is kept in conditions, to say the least, unsatisfactory, is not always possible to restore to the level of combat capability. And Russia has far more such tanks than can be put back into service. According to preliminary estimates, the potential to return the tanks from storage through restoration of their serviceability is up to 2,900 tanks. The rest are scrap and donors. But something else is much more interesting, namely that now there are videos with echelons of T-54-55 tanks being taken out of storage in Khabarovsk Krai. This raises the corresponding question: what is the purpose and reason behind this happening? If you have 2,900 tanks of different types, why would you take up plant resources and spend man-hours restoring a tank that was accepted for service in 1946, when you could simply pull a T-72 or T-80 out of mothballs? Isn't it because the actual storage situation is much worse? I'd say it's more like armor graveyards than proper storage conditions for the most part. Furthermore, the problem extends beyond that. The fact is that the restoration timeframe for T-72 and T-80 tanks is much more arduous than that of T-62 tanks, because of their basic design, and T-90 tanks, primarily due to their relative modernity. Consequently, it is faster to return the latter two to service than the fickle T-80s and the T-72s. Thus Russia now has far fewer tanks which can be returned to serviceability after withdrawal from storage. There is not enough resource to restore the relatively modern tanks, hence the focus is on the older models. And it is for this reason that the dusky genius of the Russian military-industrial complex has to pull out T-54 and T-55 tanks to make up for the lack of tanks in the combat zone, because Russia's restoration capabilities are much worse than imagined. In my line of work I have to look through a lot of information, including enemy propaganda resources. Yet, they fail to mention that the Russian military had to withdraw from a number of positions as the Ukrainians bombarded them with artillery fire so heavily that it was no longer tenable to maintain positions on the Zaporizhia front due to the incurred losses. They are silent about the fact that for several days there is a check on the readiness of combat units, because the leadership is not confident that the defenses will not fall on the first day. Why are they silent about the fact that the number of equipment and personnel supply has significantly decreased several times compared to the winter? Why the silence about the fact that instead of offensive on Orikhiv or Hulypol they are already thinking where to retreat, to Mariupol or to Crimea? They are silent about the buses that are already reserved for evacuation in Genichesk, which borders Crimea. Why not a word about the column of damaged equipment in Crimea, which the enemy will not be able to restore before the counterattack by the AFU forces? And in general, where are all the victory materials? It seems that everything is quite sad for the propagandists in recent weeks. There are a lot of questions, but for some reason I did not find any answers. But I found another scare story about a nuclear strike if the Ukrainian counteroffensive moves to Crimea. And even a version that these ancient T-55 tanks were created to fight in a nuclear war. This will be what red line in the account, which will pass the Ukrainian side. And it will cross it, no doubt about it. It seems that the tank issue in Russia is quite painful. After all, not for nothing, first Medvedev, deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia, praised the T-90, which is the worst upgrade of the T-72B, and after Putin, said that Russia will produce 1,600 tanks in 3 years. Seriously? In general, the word produces can be understood in different ways. For example, production from scratch, that is to make a brand new tank, a new combat unit. And you can mean pulling tanks out of mothballs, repairs, and perhaps even modernization. But this is not the production of a new combat unit, but exactly what the Russian military-industrial complex is. Today the Russian military-industrial complex is not manufacturing, but the restoration, repair, and modernization of tanks. So the very notion of producing sounds manipulative. But what else can we expect from them? While the Russian mass media is telling consumers of information fast food, that the T-62 tank, not produced since 1975, is the best tank in the world, and Russian television is trying to explain the removal from storage of the T-54 and T-55, adopted for service in 1946, Putin is talking about production of 1,600 tanks. Over the past years the Russian military-industrial complex has reported deliveries to the Russian army of between 160 and 300 tanks per year. At the same time, they were not new tanks, but modernized cars that were in service, or removed from conservation. That is, the maximum potential of transfer of such equipment was 25 tanks per month. As for the production, mass production of the T-72 and T-80 in Russia was stopped in 1998, and the T-90 has not been put into series production since 2011. The tank building industry in Russia was kept entirely on repair and modernization potential. What conclusions can we draw from this? The conclusion is simple: the Russian leadership is well aware of what is going on with their tank production. And they are lying, trying to appease the domestic consumer of information, while scaring NATO with their capabilities. But their capabilities are already well known, so this is just cheap clownery. Especially for those who talk about how T-54 and 55 tanks are very useful and will be used effectively as artillery, I just want to ask, what is the difference between the functionality of use between self-propelled howitzers and tanks? What is the functional difference between a tank and artillery barrel? The difference in load and pressure on the barrel at an increasing angle. Why a Soviet tank barrel has a life of 300 to 600 rounds, and an artillery barrel has a life of 1000 to 1200. Do you know how many shells for this type of tanks are in Russian warehouses and storage centers for T-54-55 tanks? What are their current characteristics, after 50 years of storage? Artillery that hits at a distance of up to 2,500 meters. With triple the load on barrels that have exhausted their service life. What is the sense in such artillery, if the Ukrainian side will not arrange meat waves, as the enemy did? It shoots. Yes, it shoots. An axe can also liquidate a machine gunner. But how many such berserkers would die in the field before they could throw the first axe at a machine gunner? Let's close the delusional conclusions and arguments on a topic that does not require discussion. Before I continue, I ask you to subscribe to my channel, it will help promote it. Now let's go back a few months. In May 2022 the first trains and columns with T-62 tanks appeared in the war zone in Ukraine. Then a number of experts began to sharply state that these tanks would not be in the first line, but would serve as artillery, being buried in the positions. A buried tank is nonsense. But for some reason most are pulling this narrative already in 2023, including in the comments under my videos. If you don't believe in logic and rationalism, in assessing the functionality of T-62 or T-54-55 tanks, there is a wonderful resource Oryx, which gives factual information. Open their site and just estimate how many buried T-62 destroyed, damaged and became a trophy there. How many? You can see the answer on the screen. The same story will be with T-54-55.